Hello, BookTube. Back with a little more mail, because I never tire of mail, and you never seem to tire of mail either. 3 packages, 2 of which are boxes. So let's see what we have here. I won't bombard your feed with Steve videos. We'll stop at this one. But let's see what this first one is. Huh. Okay. All right. This comes out in the fall. I'm seeing more and more books for September and October. Good Lord. Summer hasn't even got here yet. This is by Steve Kershaw, and it is called The Search for Atlantis. The story of Atlantis remains one of the most haunting and enigmatic tales from antiquity, and one that still resonates very deeply with the modern imagination. But where did Atlantis come from? What was it like, and where did it disappear to, if it even existed at all? Stephen B. Kershaw's The Search for Atlantis is a vivid exploration of the legend of Atlantis and its enduring influence on Western culture, from its origins in antiquity to the modern era. Atlantis was first introduced by Greek philosopher Plato in the 4th century BC. First invented by the Greek philosopher Plato in the 4th century BC. First invented by him. He invented it. It's not a place. It's an invention. As he discusses about the origin of life, the universe, and humanity, the great thinker put forward a stunning description of Atlantis, an island paradise with an ideal society. But the Atlanteans soon degenerate and become imperialist aggressors. They choose to fight against antediluvian Athens, which heroically repels their mighty forces, before a cataclysmic natural disaster destroys the warring states. Okay, well, as an examination of Plato's use of Atlantis, the myth of Atlantis, the story that he made up of Atlantis, this could be fascinating. If the author starts to go looking in the South Pacific, I'm going to be a little less fascinated, but we shall see. I'm not going to read it this summer. I'll read it the closer we get to fall. But I just finished a book just a couple of days ago. A big autobiography by an author in which he details all of his past lives. And some of them in meticulous detail, being a Swiss instructor or an ancient Athenian herbalist or whatnot. But when some of his lives take place in Atlantis, well, Atlantis didn't exist. Plato made it up. It was never a real place. It was never anywhere where people existed. It never had a marketplace or a commerce, or never sank beneath the waves. It was nothing like that. We'll see. We'll see. This author probably has a lot more serious stuff involved. Let's see. Oh, okay. All right, this is the finished copy. This comes out in June. Boy, June's going to be big. This is by David Mearns, and it's The Shipwreck Hunter. I don't know if we saw the advanced copy of this before or not. This author has discovered some of the world's most fascinating and elusive shipwrecks. From the mighty battleship HMS Hood, he's the one who discovered the Hood, to solving the mystery of HMAS Sydney, to the crumbling wooden skeletons of Vasco da Gama's 16th century fleet, Mearns has searched for and found dozens of sunken vessels in every ocean of the world. This gripping memoir, by the author, the world's foremost marine geologist, is an enthralling blend of maritime history, popular science, and Clive Cussler-style adventure. And as you can see, it has a blurb from Clive Cussler. So this guy has made the news. If you follow Shipwreck Plunder, then you're going to know this guy's name, and now he has finally written a memoir. And I got an advanced copy of this. I have no idea what became of it, but I didn't read it. I'm looking forward to this. It's going to have some great stories. So that's great. That's the finished copy. And then we have our last box. We have another quick mail haul here. What have we got here? Oh, no. All right. All right. This is the second copy of a book we just saw on my page 112 tag. This is J.D. Dickey's Rising in Flames, about Sherman's March and the fight for a new nation. Let me describe it. I didn't do it during the 112 tag. Antebellum America was a deeply troubled country, divided by partisan gridlock and ideological warfare. There were angry voices in the streets and the state houses, and furious clashes over race and immigration, coupled with a growing chasm between immense wealth and desperate poverty. The Civil War that followed brought America to the brink of self-destruction. But it also created a new country from the ruins of the old one, bolder and stronger than ever. No campaign in the war was more decisive or more important than William Sherman's legendary march through Georgia and the Carolinas. It would cripple the heart of the South's economy, free thousands of slaves, and mark the beginning of a new era. This invasion not only quelled the Confederate forces, but transformed America, forcing it to reckon with a century of injustice. In this timely narrative social history, Dickey reveals the story of women actively involved in military campaign and later in civilian networks, one of whom was so vital, even Sherman himself called her general. African Americans also took active roles as soldiers, builders, and activists, despite the hesitation on the part of some, though not all, Union officers to integrate the ranks. Rich with despair and hope, brutality and compassion, Rising in Flames tells the dramatic story of the Union's invasion of the Confederacy. Dickey brilliantly examines how this colossal struggle provided a radiant and violent rebirth for a nation on the edge of collapse, and helped create a vigorous new country from the embers of the Old South. So it's a powerful subject, and it's a touchy one in America. And that description aligns a bit with the little chunk that we read in my page 112 tag, which seemed more to lean on military gallantry than on the deeper issues which have always bothered me about Sherman's March. The author, the cover copy here says that that this book brilliantly examines how this colossal struggle provided a radiant and violent rebirth for a nation on the edge of collapse and helped create a vigorous new country from the embers of the Old South. That dodges around as much as it says. Sherman's March, I haven't read this book yet. Sherman's March is typically not written accurately by historians, who tend to take the Southern accounts of Sherman's March and simply discount them out of hand, and rely instead on Sherman's own accounts or on the Northern accounts. And that is wrong. That is wrong to do. And more evidence, I think, builds for showing that what Sherman did in his march through Georgia and the Carolinas didn't, in fact, create a vigorous new country from the embers of the Old South, but instead created wounds so deep that they still cause resentment today. Unnecessarily. The key word there being unnecessarily. It wasn't necessary to do what Sherman did. A scorched earth, completely vindictive murder spree across the entire swath of the American South, done, in my opinion, in large part to make a point, which warfare should never be done to make a point. But we'll see. We'll see what this author has to say, because it's a really complex subject. And I read the last book on Sherman's March. It was, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, and it was very thought-provoking. It ended up disappointing me, but it was very thought-provoking. In large part, what the degree to which this pleases me will depend on how fair a portrait the author paints of what actually happened during that march. Anybody who's ever studied military marches in which huge armies are detached from their bases and their supply lines can already tell you what had to have happened during that march in order for Sherman to have kept his army alive, much less victorious. If you intentionally voyage away from your supply lines, anybody who's studied military history will tell you what has to happen in order for you to do that. And yet, despite the fact that that is an absolute axiom of military history, that portrait of Sherman's March is almost never the one you get in big narrative histories, even big narrative histories I really like. So I'm fascinated to see what this is like. I will read it right away. All of these June books that are out in finished copy, I need to get to them right away. So we have Rising in Flames, Sherman's March to the Sea. Then The Shipwreck Hunter, the memoir of one of the most successful shipwreck finders in human history. And then The Search for Atlantis, which doesn't come out until the autumn. So there you go. That is a nice boxy little mail haul. We'll wrap things up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.